Hello there, Media16 and Media17, and not in that order. Hope you're doing well and hope you're staying safe and staying healthy. We are going to go over the basics of sports broadcasting interviewing, okay? The basics are very simple. You say, ooh, how simple are they? They're not that simple. It's difficult. Not really. If you have your basics down, like who, what, where, and why, and when, if you have those things in order, then you will know how to prep your interviews. Obviously, when you're interviewing a coach or a player, you're going to have all your prep. You're going to get all your information down, get it down pat from A to Z, know everything about the particular player or the coach or some celebrity or some member that represents the professional team or the college that you're covering. Okay? So, first off, when you do an interview, you've got to know the reason why you're doing the interview. Why is it important to the community or the sport you're covering? Okay? Where will you be doing this? It could be in the studio. It could be on location somewhere. It could be recorded and edited for a later broadcast. Doesn't really matter, long as the interview is produced and put together nicely. What is the interview going to be about? Something of importance. Things that are related to the game or the conversation or a narration that's been taking place over the matter of days prior. And who? Who is it? Is it a sports celebrity? Is it a sports star? Is it a controversial sports celebrity or star that's had some issues with the press or have had some issues with the law? Or is there a coach involved here? Or is there a former player or someone who has a relationship with that particular player or coach? Okay? And when? It'll be tomorrow. It'll be today. We don't know. It could be live. It could be on tape delay. So first off, when you do an interview, you are going to have an intro or open of your particular show. Now, this is a full-blown interview one-on-one, like a Roy Firestone years ago on Sports Center, and he had a show called Up Close on ESPN for many years, and all the sports journalists who have interview shows, either on TV or radio. So a basic open, like, good evening and welcome to the So-and-So Show. My name is So-and-So, and today we're going to be talking to Joe Montana, Super Bowl MVP, not once but twice, 4 times Super Bowl winner, Hall of Famer. And then you welcome your guest, and then you do a little background on him. Maybe you don't need to do that much with Joe because most people know what he's all about. You kind of preempted that with a little intro there as well. So you do a little intro with your guest or guests, and then you go into it with nice questioning, which we'll go over in just a few seconds. But by the way, keep in mind, if you do like a 30-minute interview or an hour, even if it's 10 minutes, you must alert your audience, either radio or TV, for those who just tuned in. So maybe, let's say you're doing a quick 5-minute interview, or let's say 10-minute interview. Maybe every couple of minutes, say, by the way, if you just joined us, we're speaking to Joe Montana here, and my name is so-and-so and so-and-so, and you're watching or listening to the So-and-So Show. And you just take a quick pause, you go right back into your questioning, okay? Same thing for 30-minute interviews or even hour interviews. You do the beginning, intro, you're open, and then maybe every 3 to 4 minutes. By the way, if you just joined us, we're speaking with Joe Montana, Hall of Fame quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs. So, Joe, tell me about what's your favorite fishing spot? You know, things like that, just the transition part. So with the interview, like I said, you're going to break off every 3 to 4 minutes. That's for a long-term interview. Now let's talk about the interview you're doing that a lot of you are going to be doing in your beginning parts of your career. You're going to be doing pregame. You're going to be doing halftime interviews with players and coaches as well. You're going to be doing interviews in the locker room, in the clubhouse, after the game. You're going to put together those. Those have to be quick and precise and brief. Quick questions. Do the prep. Like especially at halftime, you've seen some of those network reporters. They are running, jogging on the field with the coach and saying, "Hey, coach, can I have a minute of your time? Hey, what do you got planned for the second half? I see that the offense is stalling a little bit. Tell us what you need to improve on." Simple questions, kind of conversational items put together so then the audience viewership or the listeners can hear that and go, okay, well, the coach so-and-so is saying that they have to work on maybe passing the ball, get some better protection for the quarterback, things like that. So brief statements, 1 or 2 quick statement type questions, okay? You don't want to hold the coach up and ask him 5 questions or 5 minutes. He wants to get his team in the locker room and start rehashing things and getting things prepared for the second half. That's for football. Same with basketball. For hockey, of course, they have quarters in basketball and periods in hockey, so you have a little bit more space in between. Nonetheless, and then, of course, the post game when you're in the locker room or the clubhouse. For baseball, you're going to be interviewing players and coaches, asking them if things went well, and you kind of reflect on that, or if things did not go well, you're going to ask questions to the coach or the players on what can be put together, improved on, or what happened. Why did this take place? Why is a team batting 150 over the last 5 games as a team? Things like that. Those things, when you get going, you get the rhythm going, you'll be able to work on those skills. Some interviewing tips. You should always have a limited amount of questions. Now, this is for the long-term interview. For the precise one-on-one interview with the player after a game or before a game, those questions, you should have maybe not more than 3 or 4, just in case he or she doesn't elaborate his answer as much. But the long-term interview, one-on-one, like the Roy Firestone Sports Center / up-close interview, you are going to have as many questions as possible, because sometimes guests don't get into it and they have very short answers. Sometimes, we're going to watch some examples of some interviews here in a little bit during class, but some of the answers, some of these guys love to talk. The guys and gals, the athletes, the coaches, they'll spread that question out. They'll spread their answer out. So who knows? But it's always good to have a limited amount of questions, okay? Some questions you may not even have to use. Save them for another time. But always be prepared for lots of questions. Don't sit there and go, okay, I've got 10 questions. Those should be enough. It may not be. So always have as much as you can, because, hey, that guest / celebrity, athlete, or coach might be having a rough day, and he might not want to be very talkative. We all have bad days, and if he's having a good day, then that would be great. Then you don't have to use all your questions, but always be prepared for your interview, okay? Avoid yes and no questions, because those questions lead to nowhere. Don't ask questions like, do you like hockey? You're going to say yes or no. You're going to have a question that opens up, explores the mind of the player or the coach, okay? You're going to ask a question that they can express their answer and explore and elaborate what's going on. Discuss. That's the whole key, is discussing by answering the question, okay? So always let your guest do the talking and let him or her explain. Let him express all the feelings. Remember, even though it's your show, you are the host, but the guest and the topic is the star of your show. You're not the star, okay? You are the host. You represent the show. You set the table, but your guest or the topic, if you have multiple guests, they are the stars. They are the reason why people are tuning in, listening, and watching, okay? On your questions, too, it's always good to have follow-up questions, okay? Try to learn how to be free will of ad-libbing. Here's an example. Let's say I'm talking to wide receiver John Taylor. He was the bookend of the great Jerry Rice of the 49ers. John Taylor would have been the superstar number 1 on any other team, but he took a backseat to Jerry Rice, as he should have. But he was a great receiver, John Taylor. He liked it that way. He was a quiet guy. So if you're asking John Taylor, you would say something like, so John, you spent a lot of breakfasts with Jerry Rice. What kind of breakfast does he like? Does he eat cereal? Does he eat eggs and bacon? And then John might say, well, you know, he eats Wheaties. And then maybe with your prep, you might remember that Jerry Rice might be allergic to Wheaties. So your follow-up ad-lib question would be, wait a minute, you're saying that Jerry Rice likes Wheaties? I heard that he's allergic to wheat. Elaborate more on this. Shouldn't he be having eggs and bacon? And then that's how it opens up a nice ad-libbing. So always listen to the answers of your guests. Don't try to be fuddling and try to take your mind off it, because he might throw something at you, a dart at you, and if you don't, or he opens the door, you don't want to sit there and you want to make sure you go through the door and able to have a good ad-lib, the follow-up to his answer, so the guests will have to explain more, and your listeners or viewers go, hey, that guy's a good interviewer. He's asking questions. He's opening that guest up. That's the player or the coach, okay? So make sure you have good follow-up questions, okay? So again, most importantly, always listen to your guest attentively, all right? We're going to watch some examples here in a little while during class, or I might send the URLs to you via an email. We're going to watch in class some great interviews with Roy Firestone. He interviewed Wilt Chamberlain. He also talked to Vin Scully and Don Drysdale. And we'll try to watch those in class. If not, I'll send you the URLs. So there you have it on interviewing. Very important part of a sports reporter, sports broadcaster, sports anchor. Because, hey, when you're a sports anchor, you might be asking questions to the celebrity / athlete or coach as well. Maybe the reporter's asking a lot of questions and getting a lot of information, but maybe the anchor might be part of the interview too. He might say something like, "Hey, before we let you go, Joe, I know Bob has asked you so and so and so and so, but I have a question for you before we leave. What do you think of the so and so and so and so?" Anchor has to be part of an interview too. So the key is great questions, ad-lib questions, follow-up questions, opening up, letting that athlete or coach express everything from his heart and his soul. That is the whole key. Either being a produced interview in the studio or right there live in the locker room or in the clubhouse. Okay? And when you're ready to wrap up your interview, let's say it's a long interview, a 30-minute interview, and have commercials, but let's say they give you 20 minutes of the 30 minutes, 10 minutes with the commercials. So let's say, though, for the full time, you're at 27 minutes on the clock. You'll have a director to tell you. He'll have a countdown for you. He'll give you a 5-minute warning and a 3-minute warning. So when you get to that 3-minute warning, hit up your last question, okay? Your last question, and let your guest fulfill the answer all the way through. Don't cut him off, even if he's going long. But if he gets to 29, you can kind of give him a silent finger down below your stomach like that, or give him a piece of paper, and then he'll start to wrap up his thoughts, because you want the last minute to thank your guest, promote what's going on with your guest. Maybe he or she's got something going on, a big event or something like that, or he or she's got some kind of website. So you want to make sure that you get that in. And you want to also, before you close out at 30 minutes, you always want to be out by 29:45 or 29:50, so they can run credits and then they can trail out with your theme music or whatever. So the key is, at about 29, thank your guest, wrap up what he or she is doing and what you guys talked about, and then promote your show as well. Say, hey, next week we're going to be talking with Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid. That'll be in our next show next time on the So-and-so Show. You all have a good night, stay safe, and stay healthy. Good night, and we'll see you back here next time. And then, boom, you should be out by 29:45. So proper close. Now, if you're doing a quick interview, like a 3-minute interview or 5-minute interview, same routine. 3.5 minutes in, start wrapping it up. Things to also remember: do not ever cut off your guest during the middle of the interview. Beginning in the middle, let he or she express their answer. Don't think like, oh, they're saying too much, you want to move on to the next question. No. Remember, your guest is the star. Let he or she continue on as much as possible. Only time if, let's say there was an emergency, you're doing a live interview and there's a big issue like what's been going on with us here in the world the last couple weeks and couple months, if the news anchor needed for you to go back to the studio live or go to a different location, then that's when you have to cut them off. You have no choice. Your program director in your headset or your director pointing to you would say like this. Then you're going to say, hey, I'm sorry, I apologize, we have to go. Well, I want to catch up with you next time. We'll get you back on, that kind of thing. Give them some kind of a legitimate excuse. And then, of course, you'll invite he or she back as a guest another time. That's the only time you would cut off your guest. Please don't ever cut your guest off unless you're at 29 minutes and he or she's still going. Then you're going to have to do the old crutch. Hey, we're running out of time. We got just about 30 seconds. But, hey, thank you so much for being my guest. Thanks for joining us and letting us know how you feel and what's going on with you and your world, and so on and so on and so on. We'll see you next time, and then do your quick 20-second plug of your show and then move on, and you should be out, okay? So those are the basics of interviewing for broadcast, for sports, for news, anything, both radio and television, okay? You guys take care. We'll talk to you soon. Be healthy, be safe, watch out for the other guy, and we'll see you next time.